Hey y'all, and welcome back to CC Convos. Today we're going to be talking about the Monstera tie. I'm going to be giving you some care tips and just everything that I've learned. I'm going to teach you the things that I messed up on so that you can grow a healthy and happy Monstera tie to enjoy in your place. First, let me tell you a little bit about my history with Monstera ties and kind of where it all started. So probably about a year and a half ago, I bought a Monstera tie from a local rare plant shop, and it was going good for a little while until I noticed that the bottom leaves were starting to turn yellow and there was no new leaves coming. So when I repotted it, I noticed that a lot of the roots were starting to rot. And root rot is a huge problem that you'll find a lot on the internet for Monstera ties. So fast forward through all the chaos, I ended up propagating it. So I cut the plant into 3 cuttings and 2 of the 3 survived. And I ended up rooting them in water. I have a bunch of videos on my channel that kind of go into the process and kind of what happened, the ups and downs. And now I've transferred them into moss. So here's actually one that I just watered. And there's a root at the bottom. I ended up putting them in these clear pots so that I can monitor the roots and make sure that they're not rotting. This also helps me to see when the moss is getting dry so that I need to water it. This is a little messed up because my cat has like a fascination with when the leaves are all like wrapped together. He likes to bite the tips of them off. So that's why it's a little bit weird. But this other leaf has come in, and the other cutting I'll show you in a minute. I ended up buying another Monstera, and this one was actually found at my local HEB. And my local HEB and Kroger are starting to carry rare plants. This one was actually like $39.99. And since I've had it, this leaf has come and there's a new one. So I woke up this morning and saw another new leaf. And this plant seems to be super happy. So I'm gonna let you know some things that I've learned, things that worked and didn't work. So I've learned quite a bit because I've basically saved one from dying, made multiple plants, and they've all grown roots. And so I've been able to save it, propagate them, and grow multiple plants. And this one has been doing great. Some of the things that I've learned that I was doing wrong was that I was actually watering with like diluted hydrogen peroxide or soaking the roots in hydrogen peroxide, and I was actually chemically burning them. Even though I diluted it, I don't think I diluted the solution enough. So I thought I was actually preventing root rot when I was probably facilitating it, because when you chemically burn them, you basically kill the roots. And I learned this, I had this realization whenever I had these cuttings. So I had them in water, and I noticed like they were a little slimy, or the like cutting part was getting kind of black. And so I was like, oh no, I don't want root rot. So I put some hydrogen peroxide with the water, and then literally the next day, the tips of the roots were smooth, they weren't like fuzzy, and they were brown. And so I was like, oh no. So I ended up cutting off the ends, rinsing it, putting it in fresh water, no hydrogen peroxide, and it bounced back. So I was like, wait, I literally killed these roots. I had another plant that was just a regular Monstera, and I was like, let me just see if I keep these roots in the water and don't cut them off, what will happen? And what happened was they turned black and mushy. Another thing that I learned and I had a lot of issues with was the soil medium. So when I first bought the plant from the local plant shop, they told me, sorry, my cat's wanting to look out the window. You come say hi? When I first bought the plant, I asked them, I said, hey, like what soil medium do you use? And they told me that the plant was probably ready to be repotted. And so I don't think that I necessarily waited long enough for the plant to acclimate in my conditions before I decided, oh, hey, let's repot it in something totally different. But they told me that they use cocoa chips, So I ended up buying a bunch, but I didn't realize that they actually retain more water than I thought. They're a lot different than orchid bark or orchid chips because these are like chunkier and denser. They're more like this than like flat. So I ended up potting it with a lot of cocoa chips. I think I even have a video of like the first time I repotted it. I even put perlite and some soil. And I think that was just a horrible mixture. So when I first bought this new Monstera, it was actually potted in like sphagnum peat moss and it was so dense. But I knew that it was already used to growing in that medium. So I kept it in that pot for about 2 weeks before I decided to put some more aeration. So I noticed that it sweated a lot. So it was retaining a lot of moisture and it just wasn't drying out as much. And I was aiming for it to dry out or need to be watered. So not completely dry, but just right every week. So about 2 weeks after, when it already seemed to be acclimated, I added some perlite, some charcoal, and a little bit of sphagnum moss inside just to make it more fluffy. And I potted it into a clear pot, maybe this much bigger than the previous pot. I decided that this time around I would keep the original soil, just aerate it a little bit more and keep a very small pot so that it could be more root bound. And now I water on consistent schedule because in the environment that it is in right now, like it needs to be watered about every Saturday. And to me, I feel like that consistency is what it really likes. The second big lesson that I learned was that I was potting it in too big of a pot. And I actually learned this first from my regular Monstera. So I cut it in half, I propagated it, but I ended up putting the large cuttings into a huge pot. And my thinking was, oh, it's a huge leaf, I need a big base so that it doesn't fall over. But there was not enough roots on the cutting. So when I put the small root ball into a big pot, it stayed wet for too long, making them rot. So that was the same concept that was happening with the Thai. And so I've noticed that they like to be a lot more root bound. So I'm not going to repot or go up in size of pot until the roots, I can really see a lot. It's almost getting root bound. And when I go up in size, I'm only going to go up a max of 1 inch diameter. All right, let's look in here a little bit at the soil. Got a little bit of orchid bark, some perlite, some charcoal, and just the sphagnum peat moss that it originally came with. Let's talk some care tips. So I actually keep this plant in a northeast facing window, and I keep the ceiling fan on. I turned it off for this video, but every day I will put the ceiling fan on to keep some airflow in here. And I water it right now with the pot that it has every week. But just when you put your finger in, you notice it's dry or the pot is pretty light, then I'll water it. I have not been fertilizing it, but I will eventually get a fertilizer and I'll update y'all on that. Right now, I've just been watering it. I water it with like bottled water or spring water. So this is actually the other cutting. It has a little bit of browning on it, the cream part. This happened partly because I had this spot right there. Happened because I fertilized it and I kind of burned it with the fertilizer. Then it grew when I didn't have a lot of ventilation, so I kept it in my laundry room at the time because my cats were knocking it over. So when I wasn't home and I was at work, I kept it in my laundry room, which had no airflow, and so this actually grew. But now the cats are fine with it, they're used to it, and I keep it in my room, and I keep the fan on every day. This is actually the top cutting from those 3 original cuttings. And I think right here, we're gonna start to get a leaf. This had actually turned yellow, but this like whitish color part is new. So I'm guessing the newest leaf is getting ready to come on out of here. This looks a little bit crazy, but the tape is to hold it so it doesn't like fall over and weight. And this was like a clear plastic container that I had from some tea, and I'll show you the roots. All right, so this one has a lot of good roots. It's probably gonna need some water soon. And I love to water these with like a spray bottle, and I'll just spray it a lot to make sure that all the moss gets damp. But I've noticed a lot of times when I've just watered it with like a straight water bottle, that a lot of the water pools at the bottom and it's just too wet. So I like to spray it. I just check them a lot anyways. But you can see this like dark part right there in the middle. That's actually where I cut it off. And all of these roots have grown. Pretty soon I'm thinking I'm gonna repot this one into another one of those clear pots, kind of similar to the other one. But I'm waiting on a leaf. It's looking like something's gonna be coming. All of this is teeth marks from my cats. And this plant actually had fallen over. My cats had actually knocked it over probably like the first or second time that I repotted the original mother plant. And it still lived, so it's just a little messed up. This one has really pretty variegation, like it has big creamy parts. So I'm really curious to see what the new leaf is gonna look like. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, you learned something, and you feel a little bit more confident about caring for your Monstera tie, or maybe now you want to get one, or maybe get another one and try it again. But I hope you liked it, and I'll see you later.